دوستان عزیز سلام عرض میکنم. امیدوارم سال جدید برای همه شما آغاز شادی، سلامت و خرسندی باشه و برای شما و همه عزیزانتون سالی پر از سلامت و سعادت و سرفرازی باشه. امروز مهمان عزیزی دارم که باشون برنامه‌مو شروع میکنم. It's my great pleasure to introduce Rabbi Neil Daniel from the Santa Monica Synagogue on California Street and the 10th?
California and 19th Street.
California 19th Street. I was a little bit off. So, Rabbi Daniel, thank you for coming. I appreciate your presence.
A pleasure.
You want to talk about your synagogue and how long you have been with that synagogue?
Well, our synagogue is a Reformed synagogue, meaning it's a member of a large number of congregations in the country, 800 congregations. And we have been there for I've been there for 29 years, actually.
Oh, you look much younger than that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So when we are talking about the Reformed Judaism, and I was in your synagogue, I visited several synagogues in LA, and I had friends from different, I can't say the ideology of the Judaism, but your synagogue was much more liberal and very interesting, and people were very relaxed. And can you tell us about the Reformed Judaism and where it was started and how it's going to work?
Sure. Reformed Judaism actually started when the Enlightenment came to Germany in about the middle of the 19th century. And so there was, not only amongst Jews, but amongst all religions, there was a huge departure from religious philosophy and religious ideology because of the advent of science. And people were beginning to look at things in a much, much different way. But Reformed Judaism came along and said, no, we can do both. We can really use science on the one hand and our religion on the other hand, and they don't necessarily have to mix, but we can pursue them both and be both scientifically aware and spiritually aware at the same time. It was difficult for the German culture to accept another kind of Judaism. And so Reformed Judaism didn't really take off until it came to America. And so many Jews came to America and began to form these Reformed congregations, sometimes out of more traditional ones. And it was something that just really could happen here in America because of the separation of church and state. It was welcoming, really, of an expansion and even a sort of a gradual change in Judaism.
And I know that we have two kind of the nationality in Judaism, Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews. And which one have more tendency to the reform?
Oh, much more Ashkenazi than Sephardic, yes. Because of where it started, really in Western Europe, rather than in any of the Sephardic countries. So, which is not to say that people from Sephardic backgrounds don't belong to Reformed synagogues. They do, and they do to mine. But for the most part, it's people from Ashkenazi background.
And when I attended, actually it was this Sabbath I attended in your synagogue. It was very interesting because you were playing guitar and your cantor was a lady and singing, and it's totally much different than other synagogue that I went. And usually women are acting differently in those synagogues.
Well, the Reform movement was actually the first movement to officially ordain a woman as a rabbi back in the 1970s. And since then, of course, they have invested cantors as well. So for the Reform movement, it's not strange at all. We've been doing it for a long time. And and as well, I should say that when Reform Judaism first began in America, you could hardly tell the difference between a Reform synagogue and a liberal church. And in fact, the services were designed to look like that. They were mostly in English completely. And the synagogues were designed for two reasons: to look like churches. One, to fit in and copy what churches look like in America, but also to protect the community, because if you couldn't tell that it was a synagogue, then it wouldn't be vulnerable to attack. So, but the way the services worked was just like in a church. They were accompanied by an organ and so on and so forth. And through the years, various musical instruments have been used. The Orthodox don't use them because for two reasons. One, they don't want to use them until the second temple, like the third temple, is rebuilt, or the temple is rebuilt for the third time in Jerusalem. And number two, because on the Sabbath, you can't work, and so you can't fix anything. So if your instrument breaks, you might be tempted to fix it, so they won't use it.
So you mean that the music is prohibited in the...
Not music. It's all vocal music, but instrumentation is forbidden in an Orthodox setting.
It's very similar to the Orthodox Muslim.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very interesting that
we have a lot more in common than that, too. Yeah.
So we were together in two events. One of them was the Jewish Muslim Walk in Iman Center, that you were one of the people on the panel, and the other one was when you invited a group of the non-Jewish clergies from different countries, and you were kind enough to invite me to that event and dinner and the program in the synagogue. Well, can you tell us about your experience with the interfaith dialogue and working with the other religion?
Well, it's interesting that almost at the very beginning, really even before I was ordained as a rabbi, I've been involved in interfaith work. When I was just about to approach my final year of rabbinical school, I was in New York, and there was a big event at the Riverside Church, which is very, very famous for its social activism. And they were hosting or holding a service that would be held interfaith prior to a march to the UN to try and end the nuclear arms race, which is very topical today.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine said, well, you play guitar and sing, go sing something Jewish. And I went to this church, and there were like 3,000 people there.
They're all Christian, or?
No, they were from all different backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
There was, in fact, several tribes of Native Americans were there. It was amazing. So obviously Muslims were there, Hindus were there, Sikhs were there, etc. But it was really, and every brand of Christian was there as well. And so I sang my Jewish song. And at one point, we all said together a pledge to be peacemakers rather than peacekeepers. And it was one of the most spiritual events in my life. And the other one I had in a mosque, actually.
You did the same thing in Iman. You played guitar and sang.
I played guitar in Iman, right, I did. And so then we did this march to the UN, and I was singing along and playing along with people who are training to be Catholic priests. And we were having, a very powerful experience. And then I came back to Los Angeles to launch my career after I was ordained. And I was invited to the Episcopal Diocese to be with a group of interfaith people who were planning an event that would host Japanese who were the victims of the nuclear bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and the American soldiers who had been in the desert when they tested American nuclear weapons here. And so I haven't stopped since then.
Perfect.
I find that when I sit at an interfaith table, it's a very, very highly a deep spiritual experience. And in addition to that, I come away more Jewish, not as opposed to anything else, but just feeling bolstered in my own spirituality.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know that you know Rabbi Sarah Bassin,
Mm-hmm.
and they have the New Ground,
Right.
and they found out that the youth that they joined the program, like a Muslim and Aziza Hassan from the Muslim group,
Mm-hmm.
they become more interested in their own religion.
Right.
And there is not, adverse effect on their faith or anything when the interfaith happens. And the same thing, it happened, when I started the Interfaith Festival of Unity at Iman, and you're going to be there this year, hopefully.
Hope so.
And I think that I had more interest about the communication with the other group, as well as being more guardian for their own faith. And this is for the people who think that if they get together with the other religion, they might lose their religion, or the youth might, skip from their own faith. That never happens.
No, people are, look, first of all, if it did happen, hopefully it would be sincere and positive, and that would be okay. And yet, on the other hand, I've seen the same effect every single time that I've done anything like this. Especially young people are so proud to articulate their own faith and their own spirituality. It's really an amazing thing. And across the board, it makes them all feel more American as well, because really, this is the only place where you can have a completely open sharing like that.
Last one we had the program with Rabbi Chaim Beliak and Father Alexis Smith and Salam Al-Miryati. Three of them were here. And there was one common thing that they were concerned about it, and that is the youth and younger generation are not that much interested in the religion, and they are not very active in participating in the churches, synagogue, or mosque. How do you explain that?
I explain it. Well, first of all, I think that one of the things that I have experienced with people in that age group is that the structure of a synagogue, a church, or a mosque, of a congregation, of a regular group of people gathering in a place like that, doesn't feel as open and warm and embracing to them as being in somebody's living room, or being on a hike along the beach, or overlooking the beach, or whatever.
Or internet.
or well, the internet is as well too. Although I think that people do crave, and I've experienced this with younger people too, that they crave really that one-on-one closeness with somebody else, where they really can embrace, literally, physically embrace somebody else, and they can be embraced by them. So I think that's what they're looking for, but they don't want it formalized. And they want to very freely have their own input, and put their own twist on things and tweak things in a way that works for them. So I think that we in America are looking at a transitional period. We really are. We're really looking at some extended period, I think, of people from all backgrounds very intently looking to mold and evolve their spirituality so that it comes out with something that supports those feelings in them rather than turns them away. They don't like the older music. They don't like the older liturgy. Sometimes when they find out certain things, this is one of the things I found in interfaith work is that we all have words that we share with each other, that we share when we're alone, when Muslims are alone, when Jews are alone, when Christians are alone. And as soon as you put other people in the mix, they don't work.
That's true.
Right? They don't work because they're actually antagonistic to somebody else. And so I think that those kinds of phrases turn people off, the younger people. They don't want to be angry. They don't want to be hateful. They just want to be open with their spirituality.
Is there any different level of the Reform Judaism when you go to different synagogues?
Every Reform synagogue is different. That's for sure. There is a Reform liturgy. There is a Reform prayer book that is officially put out by the Reform movement, and many synagogues have created their own prayer book with like I did, and we have transliterations of the prayers that I authored rather than ones that are standard, because I'm looking for a broader spectrum theology in my prayer book than I think is offered in the one that comes from the official movement.
Who is making the policy of the synagogues? Is the rabbi, or there is a board of trustee or director? Because I worked with a Reform rabbi who was in one of the synagogue. When we talked together about the interfaith marriage, he said he will never accept to conduct interfaith marriage. But when he left the synagogue, he said he will do it. It doesn't make any difference for him. Who makes those decisions?
Well, there's actually two major bodies within the Reform movement that do that decision-making. And of course, then you go locally to the synagogue itself, and there is a board of directors. And of course, the board of directors and the rabbi interface with one another and make certain arrangements and agreements. So the number of Reform, or the percentage of Reform rabbis who will officiate at either an interfaith or a mixed background wedding, which I think there's a difference, and I'll explain that in a second, is about 50%. And each rabbi is given permission by the Central Conference of American Rabbis, which is our rabbinic organization, to make our own decision. So each rabbi will do that or not do that, depending on their own decision. Sometimes the board of the congregation has an opinion also and says they will allow it or not allow it. And so the rabbi that they hire has to be comfortable with that.
Thank you. Let's take a break for the commercials, and we will be back.
Okay.